Norval, you know, I have just such an incredible heart for Christian leaders, but I have a particular heart even for Christian leaders that operate in the marketplace. There's been so many men and women that have done incredible kingdom things, leading and accomplishing kingdom initiatives through that particular avenue. And there was a report recently that you shared with me a couple of days ago for us to look at today, talking about some of the habits and practices of those kinds of leaders. What were some of the things that kind of stood out to you as you started looking, man?
Well, Barna did the study with. It's interesting. It's not only Christian leaders. They call them faith forward
Okay.
CEOs,
Interesting.
and they've interviewed something like 250 or 260 CEOs. 75% of them were Christians
Okay.
or self-identified as Christians.
Sure.
But 81% were faith forward, were
Okay.
people for whom their religion, whether it's Christian or not, because 25% of the group were not.
We're not. Okay. Okay.
We're not Christians. So, but there were those who were for whom faith was a significant part of their work, of their company. So they call them faith forward.
That's a really interesting kind of a title, a choice, a moniker to say, hey, I'm being faith forward in my leadership,
Right.
etc. I mean, did they expound on some of what that faith forward looks like?
It just means that faith was significant, and it was an integral part of what they did as leaders or CEOs in their company.
Okay.
So I guess that's a way they figured out how to blend in those who were Christians and not Christians, but also to study that particular segment of people and see what religion and what faith,
Yeah.
how it affects the way they lead their companies.
Well, I know we have such an incredible heart to help leaders develop not only practices, but elements of identity and values that will sustain their leadership for a long period of time toward kind of kingdom-minded initiatives. There were a lot of really interesting findings from this report. What were some of the things that stood out to you the most as we kind of like open it up here?
Well, the first that probably the fact that faith character were significant, high on their value, their on core values, and in their priorities as business.
Okay.
A large majority of people said that their purpose for having a business was to have a positive influence, and it was way higher than profit, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they viewed their business not primarily as a source of profit, but as a source of influence, as a source of blessing.
Now, this idea of like corporate good or social good out of corporations is something that has had a bit of energy, particularly in the West and in marketplaces, right? That's where you've got, some of these big corporate entities doing, some social good works in different elements and communities. From what you saw in some of this, was there something, was this just a kind of a, forgive the phrase, a baptized version of that? Or do you think that there was something different about these leaders, some habits or practices, maybe some rhythms that differentiated them from just another trend in kind of corporate leadership?
Okay, first of all, there was a significant difference in motivation from those who self-identified as Christians and from those who identified themselves as non-Christians.
Okay.
Of course, everybody, every CEO, there's at some point profit profitability
Yeah.
is counted. It just wasn't at the top.
Sure.
But more, let's say, profitability rated higher in the list of priorities for the business among non-Christians than they did for Christians.
Okay.
So the good, doing good, let's put it this way, doing good rated higher among faith-forward leaders than it rated than those who were not.
Now, I've long been a believer that there was an economist, I think his last name was von Mises, who created a concept called shareholder wealth as the primary value that an organization brings, right? The value they bring is shareholder wealth or shareholder value. Like increasing that is the kind of fundamental role of a business, right? A lot of MBA schools will kind of teach that. But what I've heard in my conversations with a lot of Christian business owners and leaders is that they actually view profit as blood in the body. It's not evil. It's not wrong. It's actually necessary. If I don't have blood moving through my body, then the reality is I'm going to die. Right. And any business, any entity that doesn't have positive cash, right, and profits coming in will in time actually die. It's not going to be sustainable. But this is what one of our brothers, I think it was actually a business guy over in Ghana that I was listening to when we were there. He said something to this effect: blood in my body is not my purpose. No more than profit can be the purpose for my business. It's necessary, but my business must have a higher purpose than that. That's what gives it life,
Exactly.
right? And so if I could be kept alive by a machine just pumping blood around my body, I would not necessarily be alive. I wouldn't be accomplishing something. I wouldn't be transforming anything. I wouldn't be a part of, I think, a continuation of that imago Dei, that creative energy and creative reflection of the nature and person of God, if I don't have a higher purpose. So when we looked at some of their habits or rhythms, what kind of stood out? I mean, what did they find in some of this study?
Well, first of all, the majority of the leaders interviewed, particularly the ones that were faith forward, were very optimistic with regards to their own relationship with the business, with family. There was a difference with the Christians being higher, non-Christians being not as high as their level of satisfaction with their family life, with their spiritual life. But there was a correlation between practices of discipline. They call it soul care. The study calls them soul care. So the more focus or the more disciplined their lives were in terms of caring for their own souls and caring for their own spirituality, the higher the satisfaction with leadership, the higher the satisfaction, the level of satisfaction. Now, what's interesting about this that you need to take into consideration is that these are interviews with the leaders themselves. They, obviously a 360 evaluation would have been a lot more effective.
Sure.
So this is their perception of themselves, of their companies, of their lives. But there was a direct correlation. Those who practiced what they call soul care once a month or less were less satisfied, were less satisfied with their leadership, were less satisfied with their relationships in general, and were probably less successful, as individuals, as leaders.
Well, I understand from like even an analytical or social survey kind of perspective that having that be self-reported, gives some variance to that. But I'll be honest, there have definitely been moments in my life where I have not been satisfied with my family life or with my leadership and its efficacy and those kinds of things. So to hear that, still even based on self-reported, that there's some insights here, is really encouraging to me. And I can attest, even, coming out of the end of any given year, just or different leadership moments where you get busy, you get hectic, you miss some of that soul care, right? Where as Christians, we would define those as some of the spiritual disciplines, right? Faithful daily reading in God's word, fellowshipping with the saints, regular constant prayer, fasting, like these disciplines, the practices of soul care that Christ gives us.
Mm-hmm.
When I miss those things, I feel like a worse leader.
Exactly.
I don't have the energy, the drive, the bandwidth, the grace to lead in my home or to lead in an organization, or my church or any other context, unless I've held some of those steadfast practices in my own life. And I think that in some ways that's really learning and practicing elements of self-leadership that God calls us to.
Right. And one of the interesting findings that that draws the attention is that 56% of the CEOs interviewed
Mm-hmm.
considered themselves self-critical.
Okay.
So
So a little more than half at least have the personal wherewithal to self-reflect and go, hey,
to do what you
I'm
did.
missing the mark. Oh,
what you just did.
Yeah.
That's why I remembered it, because you were talking about, seeing moments when, due to the pressures of, in our case, of raising funds to do the work of of a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Because you are a CEO,
Yeah.
you're not for profit, but that, hey, at times, I ended up neglecting my own soul care. That was a characteristic of 56% of the ones that were considered faith forward, is that they thought they were kind of self-critical. They were always looking at themselves, which has a positive side and a negative. You can be self-critical and paralyze yourself, or you can be self-critical and be able to make corrections that will make you a better leader, a better person.
Well, when I think of self-leadership, I think one of the most critical elements that stands to me is I have to acknowledge my propensity to lie to myself. There's so much ability for me to make myself believe something about myself that is false. Oh, I actually knew the right answer, even though everyone else on the team is telling me something different, or I would have known, or I could have done this better, or, well, I would have, I'll use a classic one for me. I would have exercised if I hadn't had, right? And we come up with excuses and all those kinds of things. And so when I think about self-leadership, the first principle that comes to my mind is I've got to be honest with myself and practice that self-criticism, or, that self-critique, I guess I should say, without losing the confidence and the assuredness of my identity in Christ, and that his mercies are new every morning. And if I am faithful to confess my sins, he is faithful and just to forgive me of all unrighteousness.
Yeah.
It's in that I can be confident to start each day in a frame that allows me to move forward. So what other elements from those practices of self-leadership did they reflect on in this report?
I don't think they went into those, that kind of detail.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly understand that, they're probably taking a series of questions and kind of boiling it down and finding that this is some element of it. What was one of the other questions that kind of drove their action?
Well, the self-leadership is one important aspect of it, but also how does that self-leadership, how does their faith affect the way they actually lead?
Mm-hmm.
What does it imply to the actual act of leadership, which was kind of the second set of questions.
Okay, so it then becomes this question of how am I making Sunday into Monday, right? For the faith forward Christian leader, how am I kind of bridging that gap? How am I finding some critical practices? Gosh, I've got to imagine at least at the foundation, there's better self-satisfaction when they don't feel like they're a split personality, but just one personality, right? When I can feel like I'm not only allowed, but I'm able to practice my faith in all contexts of my life. I don't feel quite so divided or bifurcated, but rather I can take a breath and I can live faith forward.
And that's one of the aspects that was interesting about these leaders, about these CEOs, and is that's in that split, that's very common. Has been very common in our society, where you got the secular, you got the sacred, and so Christianity, your faith is what you do in church. Your faith, and then there's this other life. You're the CEO, you're the president, and you're separated. What the study found is that there seems to be a better integration. For instance, what motivates these faith-forward CEOs?
So a great question then, Norval, is just this: what motivates those CEOs to operate in a faith-forward fashion, or what kind of sits at the root of that process?
82% of the CEOs of the faith-forward CEOs reported that what motivates that an important motivation is to make an impact, have a positive impact in others.
Yeah. So
key motivator.
The end result here again is they long to see change or transformation in their community or in their employees or in their customers. They want to see something changing in the lives of other people. That sits as the motivator. And gosh, doesn't that sound a little kingdom-minded? I mean, I know this is not all Christians, but there's a significant percentage of these that are self-proclaimed believers. Yes. And I think that's the distinct variance that marks a Christian leader, a Christian CEO that's living out their faith in this context. Their self-leadership is one that is motivated, longing to see gospel or kingdom transformation.
And some of these high motivators are other-oriented. Like the second most important was the culture. And, their biggest motivator was creating a healthy culture in the company.
Within the company.
Within the company.
They're wanting their internal culture. So maybe there's some external culture elements too, but they want their internal culture. So actually what I'm even hearing further is, maybe even counter to some of the populist claims about CEOs out to get their employees and these faith-forward CEOs are saying, no, I care about these people. I want to see them be successful. I want them to have, positive interactions, and I want the corporate or company culture to be something that is a positive thing. I think it's important to remember the Christian way, right? The ways of Jesus are done really like when our motivation is that it's out of followership to him, it's out of love and affection for him. We're not following Jesus because it's the best strategy. We're following Jesus because he's the Lord of the universe. And it happens to be that his ways are pretty good ways to build community and impact and see transformation in culture.
Absolutely, yeah. The another key motivator was fulfilling my purpose.
Like them personally, or the purpose of their team?
No, them purpose. Motivated for leadership is their calling. The company. I guess I interpret that as being, hey, this company is my calling.
Yeah. Okay.
So what motivates me to lead and to lead well is that this is what God entrusted to me.
Well, what I hear in that, Norval, is one of the things that we teach all the time is God's looking for men and women who cast vision, set goals, mobilize the body of Christ, overcome obstacles in order to reach the nations for Christ. You have this Christian, this faith-forward CEO saying, what motivates me is a vision to see something accomplished, right? Sometimes in Christian context, we'll call that calling or purpose. But that motivator, again, forming part of that self-leadership. So I've got to have that ability to be honest with myself, be critical without being, overly, I've got to critique myself without being overly critical, but I've also got to practice understanding my vision and calling and allowing that to remain my motivator rather than something external to that, because that might undermine that or give me some habits or practices that will lead me astray. Am I down the right path on some of that?
I think so. And now, not all the findings were this positive on this particular.
What are some of the difficulties?
There are two things that they found out that I call it disturbing. Disturbing might be too strong a word, but
yeah.
One is that greater societal change ranked really low. Ranked low in the motivation for leadership.
Oh, really?
They're motivated influence the company, maybe influence the client. My take on it is a more individualistic view of the kingdom of God, where it's about influencing individuals, people, but not society as a role, as a whole. And so that making a greater impact in society ranked towards the bottom tier of motivations. The second one, it's very interesting. It's a little disparity. So although 75% of CEOs are considered Christian, 81% are faith forward. Only half said that their faith motivates them as a leader.
Okay. So if I'm a pastor listening to this right now, Norval, is this what I should be hearing? Help me here. That the Christian or the faith forward CEOs in my congregation today might need encouragement or discipleship to see and develop a motivation that more intimately connects their faith to their work, right? And intimately connects their faith work to the Global Great Commission. Mm-hmm. Would that be a fair, like, if I'm a pastor, is that something I should take away from this?
That's probably that if you're a pastor and if you have CEOs, well, yeah, I mean, those are things to talk about.
Yeah, these faith forward CEOs are they're theoretically going in a church gathering somewhere, even if it's once or twice a month or something. But if I'm wanting to disciple them, and they obviously want to see transformation in their staff, right? Within their corporate boundaries and corporate walls. But if what motivates them isn't deeper societal change, if what motivates them isn't a connection of their faith and their work as much, then gosh, that's a key opportunity for growth.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, then how? Well, Norval, we both lead in churches. How might we go about some of that? I mean, goodness, how do I help mentor that leader in that way to help them grow, to help them have some of that self-leadership?
Well, here's an interesting thing. You mentioned a word there, mentor. One of the findings that will show up later on, is that a significant percentage of the Christian CEOs, were mentored. A higher percentage of the Christian CEOs that are practicing Christians had a mentor in their lives, either at some point or right now. Than the non-practicing Christians, those who are just self-identified as Christians. Yeah. And then even higher than those who identified as non-Christians. The presence of a mentor, and you were talking about that correction, is will only come about through mentorship.
Yeah. I think when I reflect on a lot of the pastors and church leaders I know, the thought of being the one to mentor some of these marketplace leaders, honestly, if they were authentic, they'd probably say it intimidates them some. If I'm a pastor and I've got on average 100, maybe 80 people in my congregation, and one of them happens to be a CEO, and I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, like this is, this guy, this gal, she's leading in this context. I don't know how I'm supposed to mentor her, like what that looks like, all those pressures and questions. I think one of the things I'd encourage them is say, hey, when we seek to make disciples, one of the things we do is we try and get people who are in similar seasons of life. There's some great ministries that exist that help mentor Christian CEOs to live out their faith in these kinds of contexts. Obviously, C12 is a group that paid for this particular research to be done, but there's others. FCCI, the Fellowship of Companies for Christ International, groups like Praxis is another great one. There's all kinds of individuals and movements, and we've even talked to some business mentors on the podcast. I talked to a dear friend of mine, Rod Streetman, a number of episodes back, that that point to individuals that are mentoring leaders in the midst of that process in that
Yeah.
season of
And-
leadership.
And basically, the goal is to help them break that dichotomy of secular and sacred, to see their companies as a sacred space,
Yeah.
just as much as a church is, and see their work, and like increase that percentage of CEOs that consider their faith to be at one of the top priorities of their lives as CEOs and their business as a whole.
Well, I'm so encouraged, Norval, that we've been able to look at this. I know there's 4 elements to this report. We're just kind of looking at the first here in this particular one, but I'm encouraged to see, hey, in these faith forward CEOs, there's a good, faithful practice of self leadership. It's got some honest feedback to self. I got to look, they're looking at that, they're investigating that. They're identifying their motivations, and there's a real opportunity as a Christian leader to come alongside them as a pastor, as just a brother, a mentor, to help them understand and discover how they can integrate those things each day in various ways to not only bring transformation in their employees, praise God, but also beyond their walls into the larger community and society writ large. And as they practice their faith in that space, it seems to be that this report continually points out they're having higher satisfaction, less burnout, and overall a higher degree of impact, longevity, and self-satisfaction in the work that they're leading. Those sound like some really good outcomes for a leader that's leading in the marketplace.
And companies like that can really make an impact in society.
Brother, that's exciting.
That's what we're here for. That's the kingdom. That's the kingdom coming mentality.
That's right.
That the kingdom of God is not just the church.
That's
the
right.
kingdom of God is companies that influence people, that bless people, that are other focused, that practice servant leadership.
The kingdom of God goes out of the doors every time the church opens its doors at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
They go back out into the world, and it's wonderful to see these faith-forward leaders experiencing such satisfaction as they step into and as they practice their faith in their business and market. Man, that's exciting. Hey, listen, I want to encourage you at the International Leadership Institute. We want to walk with leaders just like you, just like these faith-forward Christian leaders, in discovering not only God's call for your life, but the core values of leadership that will allow you to accomplish it and have a sustaining legacy of leadership. If you want to discover more about that, go to iliteam.org. There we've got some different things that you can see about each of those values, understand how you can get plugged into this global network and community. Norval, it's always a great time to sit down with you and chat through these kinds of reports and research. And I look forward to talking through the next one with you, man.
Yes, sir.